The pills rattled in the small orange bottle like tiny, brittle bones. Each click and shake was a constant, unwelcome reminder that my life was no longer entirely my own. I held the bottle up to the afternoon sun slanting through my kitchen window, watching the light catch the edges of each capsule. A month's supply of medication, the price tag higher than most people's rent. The deep, heavy irony of it all was not lost on me. Not after spending 4 decades building Caldwell Innovations, one of the most successful medical supply companies in the entire region. I had spent my life selling hope, and now I was buying it back, one expensive pill at a time. My name is Hazel Caldwell. I am 72 years old, a retired CEO, and the widow of a man named Walter who loved me quietly but profoundly. I am also the mother of a daughter who, for the better part of the last decade, has only visited when she wants something. I've survived the sudden grief of losing my husband, navigated 3 recessions, and weathered countless betrayals in the cutthroat business world. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared me for the moment when my doctor, Dr. Evans, looked across her desk at me with that professional, compassionate yet detached expression and said the words I had always secretly feared: pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. We're looking at 6 months to a year, Hazel. Maybe longer if treatment goes well, but we need to start immediately. There was no screaming, no dramatic collapse into tears. There was just a cold, sharp clarity that washed over me, like the shock of jumping into winter water. A quiet voice inside my head whispered, "Well then, this is where your story finally shifts." I didn't cry that day. I didn't even call my daughter Serena. She would have demanded details I wasn't ready to share and would have offered a brand of concern that always felt more like a calculated strategy than genuine love. Instead, I went home, made myself a cup of Earl Grey tea, and sat in my living room surrounded by old photographs and the warm, familiar scent of lavender from the garden. The house felt quiet to quiet. It wasn't the comforting kind of silence that I usually enjoyed. It was the kind that made you feel like you had already disappeared, and no one had even noticed you were gone. Looking out the window, I saw the roses blooming in full defiance of the cold October air. My late husband, Walter, had planted them with me one summer. They had returned, more beautiful and stronger each year, as if to remind me that beauty often grows directly from pain. I took the first pill without any ceremony. No prayer, no whispered toast to courage, just a simple decision. A small but powerful beginning. This wasn't going to be a story about dying. It was going to be a story about choosing how to live before someone else tried to choose for me. Before I begin telling you my story, let me know in the comments where you're listening from, and if you'd like to share your own story, feel free to write to us. The text came at precisely to 17 p.m., just as I was setting the kettle down on the stove. "Hey, Mom. Marcus and I were thinking we should stop by tonight. Say, around 6. Oh. No emojis. No, how are you feeling?" Just the kind of message you send when you have already decided what the answer should be. I typed out a reply. "Sure, see you then." I didn't even need to ask why they were coming. I already knew. Serena and her husband, Marcus, lived a short 20-minute drive away. They visited maybe once a month, always with a very specific purpose. A favor to ask, a document to sign, a loan to float. The last time they came, it was because they wanted me to co-sign for a brand new luxury SUV. Before that, they needed someone to watch their expensive Bernedoodle Bentley during a week-long trip to the tropics. They never came just to talk, and they certainly never came just to listen. At 6:01 p.m., the doorbell rang. Serena stood there in a tailored camel coat, a coat I vaguely remembered buying for her birthday last year. Her makeup was absolutely flawless, and her hair was pulled into a neat chignon that probably cost more than my monthly groceries. Marcus wore a crisp navy suit and the kind of practiced smile he reserved exclusively for meetings with his high-net-worth clients. "Hi, Mom," she said, leaning in for a quick, dry-cheeked kiss. "You look tired." I invited them into the living room. The space still looked exactly the way Walter and I had designed it: warm wooden furniture, floral curtains, shelves filled with family pictures from a time when love didn't feel so transactional. Serena and Marcus sat on the couch like stiff, polite guests, their backs straight, their eyes scanning the room, already mentally redecorating. "We've been thinking," Serena began, her tone perfectly rehearsed. "It's probably too much for you to handle all this on your own now. The house, the bills, all the medical stuff. I'm 72, Not 100, I said, my voice calm but firm. And I've managed this house just fine for the past 3 years. On my own. Marcus leaned forward, his hands clasped together in a perfect show of concern. Hazel, we're just trying to make sure you're taken care of. Maybe it's time to consider other options. Something like moving in with us, or a retirement community somewhere that can support your situation. There it was. My situation. As if my cancer were a social fox pause I had made at a cocktail party. And the house? I asked, looking directly at Marcus. He smiled a little too widely. Well, it could fetch a great price right now. We'd help with the sale, of course. I could even manage the investment strategy to maximize the returns for your care. I looked at their faces, so polished, so practiced. I didn't see concern. I saw nothing but cold, hard calculation. They weren't here to help me live. They were here to arrange my final exit. The house felt colder after they left. Not physically, but in the way a space shifts when people walk through it with hidden, selfish intentions. I sat alone in the living room, watching the clock hands crawl toward midnight, wondering when my life had become a simple spreadsheet that someone else wanted to manage. That's when the phone rang. Not my cell phone, the old landline. I hadn't used it in weeks. Hazel, a voice said, soft and a little uncertain. Is that you? It's Raphael. I froze. Raphael. I hadn't heard that name spoken in nearly 30 years. He was once a warehouse supervisor at my company, Caldwell Innovations. A Portuguese immigrant who worked long, hard hours, always with a quiet smile and a pair of eyes that saw more than I wanted to admit. After Walter passed away, Raphael had been there. He was the first to offer condolences, then to carry heavy boxes, and then, most surprisingly, he was there to make me laugh again. We had a brief, intense relationship. No promises, just something that felt real and raw in a time when everything else in my life felt like it was breaking apart. When his mother fell gravely ill, he moved back to Portugal to take care of her. I never saw him again. Until now. Raphael, I said, surprised by how easily his name came out. How did you find me? I never stopped looking, he said, softly. I heard about your illness from someone who used to work at Caldwell Innovations. And about your daughter. About everything. His voice wasn't judging me. It was just knowing. I'm so sorry, I whispered, not sure what for. Don't be. He replied gently. I'm calling because you have options, Hazel. You don't have to let them script the rest of your story. There was a long, comfortable pause. I live just outside of Costa Verde now. I run a small hospitality business. I have connections, I have friends, and I have access to medicine. If you want out, if you want a life that is truly yours, I can help you. Not out of pity, but because I still care about you. His words landed gently but with a great deal of weight, like a fresh blanket of snow on a tree that was already beginning to lean. I don't know, I whispered. It's not that simple. There are legal issues. My medical care. My house. Let me help with the details, he said. You've spent your entire life taking care of everyone else. Maybe it's time. Someone took care of you. I said nothing, but in that moment, a massive crack formed in the wall I hadn't even realized I'd built around myself. Raphael wasn't offering me an escape. He was offering me true freedom, and something even rarer, a chance to choose what the rest of my life would look like. Not because I was dying, but because I was finally ready to live. By the next morning, I wasn't thinking about whether I could do it. I was thinking about how Raphael had lit a small spark inside me. And the more I thought about the way Serena and Marcus were hovering, calculating, and waiting for me to decline, the more that small spark caught fire. I wasn't going to wait around while they arranged my final years like a boardroom transition plan. I made a list. First, the legal groundwork. I called Mr. Davies, my attorney of 15 years. It was a M when I called, and he answered groggily, but alert. Hazel, are you all right? He asked. I'm fine, I said, but I need to meet you tonight. To do what? I need to revoke Serena's power of attorney, rewrite my will, and set up offshore protections for my assets. There was a long, stunned silence on the other end of the line. You're serious? Dead serious, I replied. 2 hours later, I walked into Mr. Davies' office carrying a large folder stuffed with financial statements, my medical records, and a yellow legal pad full of handwritten notes. Hazel, he said carefully, I know you've been through a lot, but these are major moves. If Serena challenges you legally, she already is, I cut in. She just hasn't filed the paperwork yet. We worked until the sun came up, By the time I left his office, the wheels were in motion. New trusts were established. Accounts were opened in Switzerland and Costa Verde. The power of attorney was revoked, and my will was revised to direct the bulk of my estate to elder care foundations and charities for women entrepreneurs. Serena wouldn't see it coming, and even if she did, she wouldn't be able to touch a single cent. Second, the logistics. I booked a one-way flight to Costa Verde, seat 3A. I would leave in 5 days, just enough time to disappear without raising any immediate suspicion. Third, a cover story. Mr. Davies and I crafted a narrative to explain my sudden absence. According to the paper trail, I was heading to an experimental treatment facility in Mexico. It was believable enough, desperate enough, and just out of reach enough to keep Serena occupied and off my back. Fourth, closure. I stood in the kitchen. That had once been my favorite room in the house and looked around. The light still poured in just right. The roses still bloomed outside, but everything felt used up. This house had been a home, then a cage. I wouldn't sell it, not yet. Let Serena and Marcus walk into it one day and wonder where I had gone. Wonder why I had left without saying goodbye. She'd think I had finally lost my mind. What she wouldn't realize, what I was counting on her not realizing, was that I had finally found it. Not in a hospital bed, not under her watchful eye, but on my own terms. And in 5 days, I would be boarding a plane to prove it. The plane touched down in Costa Verde at 2:47 p.m. local time. I stepped off as Hazel Caldwell, but I no longer felt like the woman who had left Havenwood. That version of me had been exhausted, boxed in, and managed like an asset on a spreadsheet. Here, I was a nobody, which meant I could finally be somebody. Raphael met me just past customs, holding a small sign with my name written in block letters. It was such a simple, loving gesture, but I felt my throat tighten. He hadn't changed much. His silver hair gave him a kind of quiet elegance. His smile, genuine and warm, still disarmed me in the best possible way. "You came," he said, as though he hadn't been entirely sure until that very moment. "I said I would," I replied with a small smile. He drove us along the coast in a black sedan, speaking softly, as if not to overwhelm me. I didn't say much. I was too busy watching the sea flicker outside the window. The dramatic cliffs, the terraced vineyards, the tiled rooftops of a place that felt more like home than anywhere I had been in decades. His house, he called it our house, sat on a gentle rise in the hills, overlooking the Atlantic Ocean. It was a whitewashed villa with blue shutters, trimmed with wild roses and lavender. It was the kind of house I might have dreamed of once, but then dismissed as being too romantic, too impractical for a woman like me. Now, it felt entirely earned. That first night, we sat on the terrace drinking a local white wine and eating fresh olives while the sunset turned the ocean into molten gold. "I had this place built 3 years ago," Raphael said quietly, "but I never really moved in. Not truly. I was waiting." "For what?" I asked. "For you," he said. I didn't know what to say, so I took his hand instead. It said more than any words could. The following week, I met with Dr. Santos, one of Costa Verde's top oncologists. Raphael had already arranged everything. My medical records had been transferred, and all my appointments were booked. I asked him how he had managed to do all that, and he just smiled. "I've had 30 years to prepare for the day I'd see you again, Hazel. You think I would leave the details to chance?" The hospital was modern, discreet, and shockingly affordable compared to the bills I had been paying back in the States. The staff treated me like a person, not a grim prognosis. Each day brought a new, peaceful rhythm. Slow mornings with strong coffee, long walks along the shore, and gentle conversation with someone who actually listened to me. Raphael wasn't trying to fix me. He wasn't trying to control anything. He simply let me be. And slowly, I remembered what it was like to exist without being managed, to be seen without being evaluated, and to be loved without being measured. In Costa Verde, I wasn't a burden. I was just Hazel. And for the first time in many years, that was enough. 2 weeks into my quiet new life, the past came knocking. Mr. Davies called from Havenwood, his voice tight with concern. "Serena's filed a petition," he said. "She's asking the court to declare you mentally incompetent. She's claiming your recent financial decisions are evidence of cognitive decline," he continued. "The transfers, the offshore accounts, the revoked power of attorney, she's presenting it all as a sign that you've been manipulated or confused." "By whom?" I asked calmly. Raphael, presumably. Or me, or the cancer. It doesn't matter. She's spinning a narrative that you're no longer capable of rational judgment and need a guardian. I leaned back in the terrace chair, the gentle sea breeze playing with my hair. And what does the judge think? The court wants to hear from you, in writing or remotely. If we can show that you made these decisions with full understanding, the petition falls apart. But if she pushes harder, she could try to override everything. That's when I knew this wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about pure, unadulterated power. Serena had lost control, and now she was going to war to get it back. I didn't panic. I planned. I immediately hired a private investigator in my old city who specialized in elder exploitation. Every text, every call, every suggestion Serena and Marcus had made in the months leading up to my departure, every manipulative, pressuring, and dismissive comment was documented and carefully preserved. Then I brought in a forensic accountant. Over the years, I had given Serena more than $500,000. The graduate school tuition, the Vermont vacation home, the interest-free loans that somehow always turned into gifts. I wanted a full report, where the money went, what it was used for, and what had been promised to me in return. Next, I called a PR consultant, one who specifically handled high-profile elder abuse cases. If Serena wanted to make this public, I was going to make sure she understood the weight of that choice. The narrative wasn't going to be about a confused old woman mismanaging her money. It was going to be about a mother fighting back. A week later, I received word that Serena and Marcus had flown to Costa Verde. Their investigator had traced my name to a wellness clinic north of Porto, a facility known for treating wealthy American patients with unconventional therapies. I smiled to myself. Raphael had fed that information to the right people at just the right time. The clinic was real, but it was also a high-security psychiatric center. The reports came in quickly. Serena and Marcus showed up, demanded to see me, and refused to leave when told I wasn't there. She accused the staff of lying, of hiding me, of colluding in some sort of international conspiracy. Security was called. The local police soon followed. Serena left with a formal trespass warning and a note in her file: unstable behavior, highly agitated, possibly delusional. She had wanted me declared unfit. But in the end, she had just made the strongest possible argument for her own instability. As I watched the waves roll in that evening, I sipped a glass of wine next to Raphael and smiled to myself. Serena had thrown the first punch, but I had already planned the knockout. She showed up at my gate 2 days later. Serena stood there in a wrinkled linen blouse, her eyes puffy from jet lag and something else entirely, a mix of rage and disbelief. Marcus hovered silently behind her, no longer wearing the smug, self-assured mask of a man in control. They stared at the beautiful villa, then back at me, as if they couldn't quite believe I was real. "Mom," Serena said, her voice thin, "you look different." "I feel different," I replied. "Come in." Raphael greeted them in the living room with a calm that only made Marcus more uncomfortable. The space was filled with soft music, fresh flowers, and the sea breeze drifting in through the open windows. It wasn't the setting they expected. It wasn't a scene of a breakdown. It was a sanctuary. Serena sat stiffly on the edge of the couch. "We were worried sick about you. No one knew where you were. The clinic said you'd never been there. The police were even involved. That must have been stressful for you," I said, pouring tea without invitation. She blinked at me. "You don't seem upset." "Why would I be upset?" I said, sitting opposite her. "You came looking for a helpless woman lost in her illness. Instead, you found a mother who doesn't need saving." Her face flushed a deep red. "You've moved money, cut us out of decisions, hidden your condition from us." "I've protected myself," I interrupted, my voice steady. "There's a difference." Marcus leaned forward. "Hazel, let's be reasonable. You're still in treatment. These kinds of changes, legal, financial, they raise questions." "What kind of questions?" I asked him. "The kind that justify you trying to take over my estate? The kind that turn my diagnosis into your opportunity?" Serena stood up. "We just wanted to help you." "No," I said, my voice steady and unwavering. "You wanted to manage me, like a trust fund or a tax shelter. You didn't ask what I wanted. You just made assumptions based on what was easiest for you." There was a long, painful pause. Then I dropped the final card. "I sold Caldwell Innovations for $8.2 million 3 months ago, and every single dollar is now secured in accounts. you will never ever be able to access. The will has been changed. The power of attorney is revoked. If anything happens to me, it goes to organizations that help protect women from the very kind of manipulation I've just lived through. Marcus spoke in a voice that was barely a whisper. You can't do that. I already have. Serena's voice cracked. But we're your family. No, I said gently. Raphael is family. My doctor here, my lawyer, they are family. They are people who see me as a human being, not a transaction. I raised you with love, Serena. But somewhere along the way, you learned to value control over true connection. She sank back into the couch, utterly silent. The fight had completely drained from her. I'm not angry, I said, standing to my feet, but I am done. Done pretending. Done making excuses for you. And done funding this fantasy life you think you're owed. I walked them to the front door. As Serena stepped outside, she looked back at me, her eyes wet with tears. I did love you, Mom. Maybe, I said softly. But love without respect is just another word for control. I closed the door behind her, not with anger, but with a new sense of certainty and peace. And the silence in the house had never felt so beautiful. 6 months later, I woke up to the sound of seabirds and the scent of fresh coffee drifting in from the kitchen. Raphael was humming, barefoot on the tile, reading the Portuguese news and pretending not to worry about my blood work appointment that afternoon. My cancer was in complete remission. Dr. Santos said it was rare, nothing short of remarkable. But I didn't need him to explain why. I had chosen to live, not just biologically, but fully with intention, with joy, and with healthy boundaries. I had walked away from the version of myself that had measured my worth in sacrifice and silence. Now, I measured my worth in peaceful mornings like this one. My days were filled with a new purpose. Raphael and I had begun building a small program for medical travelers, mostly Americans, who were seeking not just medical treatment but dignity. We partnered with local doctors, therapists, and small care homes. I called it Haven Grace, a quiet, intentional name. Just like me, back in Havenwood, things were less graceful. Serena and Marcus had divorced shortly after returning to the States. Between the legal bills, the public embarrassment, and their shattered reputations, they had become a cautionary tale among their peers. Mr. Davies kept me informed, although I rarely asked him to. He once offered to send over court updates. I politely declined. I didn't need revenge. Justice had been more than enough. One letter did come from Serena. It was a handwritten note, shaky and unsteady. She didn't apologize. She didn't ask for money. She simply wrote, I didn't know who you really were until you left. Maybe I never wanted to. I didn't reply. Some chapters simply don't deserve sequels. Instead, I folded the letter and placed it in a box marked lessons, then returned to the garden, where Raphael was trimming the roses he had planted in my honor. You're quiet, he said. I'm thinking, I replied. About the past? No, I said with a smile. About how lucky I am to still have a future. We sat together on the terrace as the sun rose, casting light over the sea, over our hands intertwined, over a life not stolen, but reclaimed. Some stories end in forgiveness. Mine didn't need to. It ended in freedom, and in the soft certainty that I had chosen my ending well and had finally lived my truth out loud.